My parents said there was no room for me at Thanksgiving, so I bought a Manhattan loft and told them there's no room for them either. For the past 10 years, every holiday season has been the same conversation. "Sorry, honey," my dad would say, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We just don't have enough room for you and the kids this year. You understand, right?" And like an idiot, I always did. Meanwhile, my sister Claire, her husband, their 2 kids, and even their slobbering golden retriever somehow managed to squeeze into the house just fine. Every time I drove by, I'd see their cars lined up in the driveway, the windows glowing warm with laughter and chatter. But me? My family? We were too much. When I got divorced 6 years ago, my parents' attitude shifted overnight. Suddenly, I was a lot to handle. My mom said my negative energy might bring the mood down. My dad called my ex such a good man and hinted that I'd ruined everything by focusing too much on my career. I never fought back. I just smiled, made excuses to my kids, and told them, "Grandma and Grandpa are just busy this year." Truthfully, I stopped expecting anything from them. Until this year. 2025 has been strange, exhausting but rewarding. I got promoted to creative director at a Manhattan ad firm, finalized a few investment deals, and after years of renting, I finally bought a place of my own, a 5-bedroom loft overlooking the Hudson. It's bright, modern, and feels like freedom. When my mom heard about it, "Thank you, Claire, for spilling it on the family group chat," she called instantly. "Oh, sweetheart. A loft in Manhattan? That's incredible. You must host Thanksgiving this year." Her tone was sugary sweet, the same tone she used whenever she wanted something. I just listened quietly. Then she added, "We'll all come over tonight to see it. Me, your father, Claire, the kids, and Ben. Oh, and they'll bring the dog, of course." I paused, let her finish her excited ramble, and said, "Sorry, Mom. There's no room for you." Silence. I could practically hear her jaw drop. "You're joking, right?" she said after a moment. "Not at all. You said the same thing to me every year for the last decade. Guess I finally understand what you meant." Her voice cracked. But we're family." I laughed, a small, bitter sound. "Yeah, and I was family too. But that didn't seem to matter when you left me and my kids home alone every Thanksgiving while Claire's dog got his own seat at the table." She tried to protest, but I hung up. Thanksgiving morning arrived, and I'll admit, it felt strange at first. There was a hollow ache in my chest as I remembered all the holidays I'd spent wishing for acceptance, validation, love. But as I stood in my new kitchen, surrounded by the smell of roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and fresh-baked bread, that ache began to fade. My kids were laughing in the living room, decorating the giant windows with paper leaves. My boyfriend, who had stood by me through every rejection, was setting the table. And for once, the house felt full. Not of people who pretended to care, but of people who actually did. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Claire. "You seriously told Mom there's no room? What's wrong with you?" I stared at the screen and typed back. "Nothing. I just finally learned from the best." Later that night, as the city lights glittered outside my windows, my daughter climbed onto my lap and whispered, "Mom, this was the best Thanksgiving ever." I smiled and kissed her forehead. Because it was. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was missing out on a family gathering. I realized, I'd built my own family. When my parents called again a week later, I didn't pick up. I didn't owe them space at my table, not after years of exclusion disguised as tradition. This year, I chose peace over obligation. And it felt perfect. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, I thought the drama was over. My phone had been silent for 2 days, and I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, my parents had finally understood what boundaries looked like. But of course, that was wishful thinking. At 7:42 p.m., the doorbell rang. When I checked the security camera feed, my stomach dropped. Standing in the hallway of my Manhattan building, wrapped in winter coats and fake smiles, were my parents, and behind them, Claire, her husband, 2 kids, and their golden retriever. The whole family. They looked like they'd just come from a Hallmark movie, except this wasn't heartwarming. It was a full-blown invasion. I buzzed them in, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see what they thought they were doing. The elevator opened with a chime, and my mother stepped out first, her heels clicking dramatically against the hardwood. She spread her arms like she was walking into her own home. "Oh, sweetheart. It's even more beautiful in person," she said, eyes wide as she looked around my loft. "Look at these windows. Oh, and that dining table, so elegant." I didn't move. "What are you all doing here?" She laughed nervously, pretending not to hear the cold edge in my voice. "We were worried about you. You sounded so upset on the phone. We thought a visit might help smooth things over." Dad stepped forward, uninvited. "We didn't want to end the holiday on bad terms. Let's just have a little family dinner, all right?" Claire brought pie. Claire lifted a box from a bakery bag like it was a peace offering. Her husband and kids were already making themselves at home, unzipping jackets, looking around. And the dog, of course, was sniffing my expensive rug. I stood there for a moment, gripping the edge of the kitchen island, fighting the instinct to scream. "Do you all hear yourselves?" I finally said. "You told me, for years, that there was no room for me. Now that I have something you want, a fancy place, a nice view. You suddenly remember I exist?" Mom's smile faltered. "Honey, that's not fair. Things were different back then. We were busy. Out of space. Tired of me being a reminder that my marriage didn't work." I cut in. Her lips tightened. "You don't need to be so cruel." I laughed bitterly. Cruel. I spent 10 Thanksgivings explaining to my kids why Grandma didn't want them at her table. And you're calling me cruel because I finally stopped begging for scraps of affection? The room went silent. Even Claire didn't have her usual sarcastic comment ready. Dad cleared his throat. "We just thought, maybe you'd want to reconnect. Especially now that you're doing well." There it was. Not "we missed you," not "we love you," but "you're successful now." It wasn't love. It was envy dressed as reconciliation. I exhaled slowly. "You didn't come here to reconnect. You came because you want to be part of my success. You want the fancy Manhattan dinner and the skyline view for your Facebook photos. You want to say, 'Look at our daughter, she's made it.'" Mom's face turned pink. "That's not true." "Really? Because the last time I called you, crying because I couldn't afford Christmas gifts for the kids, you said you couldn't help, because Claire's family had bigger needs. Now suddenly you have time to visit." The tension in the room was suffocating. Finally, my boyfriend, Daniel, who had been silent up until that point, walked in from the kitchen with a calm expression. "Maybe it's time for everyone to leave," he said politely, setting down a tray of untouched appetizers. "This isn't a good moment for reconciliation." My mom turned on him like a hawk. "Excuse me, young man, but this is family business." He smiled faintly. "And I'm part of that family now. Which means protecting her peace comes first." My dad muttered something under his breath, but even he seemed unsure what to say. Claire, ever the peacemaker when things got uncomfortable, finally spoke. "Look, can we all just sit down and talk? It's been years of tension. Maybe this is the chance to finally—" "Claire," I interrupted, "do you even realize how many times I tried to talk to you? How many times I asked you to step in when Mom and Dad excluded us? You didn't care then. Why now?" Her face went pale. She looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Mom crossed her arms, defensive now. We came here in good faith, and you're throwing it in our faces. You've changed. You're so cold, so ungrateful. Ungrateful? I snapped. You never gave me anything to be grateful for. You didn't come to my kids' birthdays. You skipped my promotion party. You made me feel like a burden every time I called home. And now you expect me to open my door and pretend none of that happened? Mom's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't move to comfort her. I was done cushioning their feelings at the expense of my own. I think you should all go, I said finally, pointing toward the door. This isn't your home. You made sure I knew that for years. Now I'm returning the favor. Dad looked furious but said nothing. Mom sniffled dramatically, grabbing her purse. Claire herded her kids toward the elevator. The dog barked once, as if sensing the tension. When the door finally closed behind them, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Daniel sat beside me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You okay? I nodded, though my chest felt heavy. Yeah. Just, sad. It's like losing them all over again. He squeezed my hand. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself again. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. You embarrassed us tonight. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a photo of my kids laughing in the living room, the skyline glowing behind them, and sent it to Daniel with a single message. This is what happy looks like. 3 weeks passed after the night I kicked them out. 3 quiet, peaceful weeks. No calls. No unexpected visits. No guilt-tripping texts, except that one from my mom, you embarrassed us. I hope you're happy. I was happy. For once, my apartment didn't carry the weight of needing anyone's approval. My kids were laughing more. Daniel and I were talking about maybe taking a trip for Christmas, somewhere far from family politics, somewhere warm. I thought the storm was finally over. But my mother never stays silent for long. It started with a letter. A real, handwritten letter, delivered to my building's concierge. The envelope was expensive, ivory, sealed with a wax stamp. My mom had always loved theatrics. Inside, her cursive handwriting looped across 3 pages. The first line read, "Family is everything, even when you think you've outgrown it." I almost stopped reading there. But curiosity won. She wrote about how much she regretted the tension between us. How pride can get in the way of love. How she and Dad had been rethinking their future, and wanted to make things right before it was too late. And then came the real reason for the letter. We've met with our attorney about our estate planning. We're updating our will. We'd like to include you and your children, but we need to make sure our family is united first. Please come over for dinner next Sunday so we can talk about it as a family. I felt my jaw tighten. She wasn't apologizing. She was negotiating. I showed Daniel the letter that night. He read it, raised an eyebrow, and said flatly, "That's not an olive branch. That's bait." I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Yeah. She's dangling money to get control again. Are you going? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to burn this letter. But another part of me wants to face her one last time and say everything I never could. He nodded. Then do it. But on your terms. The next Sunday, I drove out to their suburban house. The same house that had been too full for me every holiday for 10 years. The driveway was packed, as usual. Claire's SUV, her husband's truck, their kids' bikes on the lawn. The dog barked as I approached, just like old times. Mom opened the door before I could even knock. Sweetheart. You came, she said, voice too high, too fake. The smell of roasted turkey hit me immediately. She'd gone all out, just like a holiday dinner. I wondered who she was performing for this time. We sat at the long oak table. Claire and her family were already there. My dad sat at the head of the table, hands folded like a judge presiding over a hearing. I didn't eat. I just waited. After the small talk fizzled out, Mom sighed dramatically and clasped her hands together. "So," she began, "your father and I have been doing some financial planning. We're not getting any younger. And we want to make sure everyone is taken care of." Claire smiled politely, pretending she hadn't already known. Mom continued, "You know, we've worked hard for what we have. The house, the lake cabin, the retirement accounts. It's important that those things stay in the family." I leaned back. "And what does that have to do with me?" She blinked, surprised by the bluntness. "Well," she said carefully, "you've been distant lately. We don't want misunderstandings. We want unity. It wouldn't be fair to include someone who's chosen to separate themselves from the family, you know." There it was. The quiet threat. Be obedient, play nice, or be cut out. I smiled slowly. "So let me get this straight. You excluded me from holidays, from birthdays, from every family event for years. Then when I stopped chasing you for approval, you threatened to erase me from your will." Mom's face went pale. "No one's threatening anyone." Dad interjected. "It's just practical. We want our legacy to go to people who care about the family. Like Claire." I said. "The same Claire who called me selfish for buying an apartment instead of spending the money on family trips." Claire shifted uncomfortably. "Don't drag me into this." I turned back to Mom. "You know what's funny? You keep talking about legacy. But you don't even realize, your real legacy is how small you made me feel. How you taught me that love had to be earned through obedience." Her eyes glistened. "You're twisting my words. Everything we did was for your own good." I laughed. "No, everything you did was to make sure you stayed in control." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "You can keep your inheritance. I don't need your money. I have my own, earned without your help, without your approval, without your pity." Mom's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this when we're gone." I looked her in the eyes. "I've been grieving you for 10 years, Mom. You're already gone." The room fell silent. Even the dog stopped barking. I turned and walked toward the door. As I reached for the handle, Mom's voice broke behind me. "After everything we've done for you." I didn't turn around. "Exactly," I said. "After everything you've done to me." And I left. Back in my car, I felt the old ache again, the one that used to come after every family encounter. But this time, it was different. It wasn't pain from rejection. It was relief. Because I finally understood something. Freedom isn't just walking away. It's refusing to walk back. A week later, I got another letter from their lawyer. They'd officially removed me from their will. No apology, no second chance. Just a legal document that confirmed what I'd known all along, their love had conditions. I poured myself a glass of wine, looked out over the city skyline, and smiled. I'd lost an inheritance. But I'd gained peace. And for the first time, that felt like the better deal. Months passed without a word from them. I thought it was over, until one night, Claire called. "Dad's in the hospital," she said through tears. "Mom wants to see you." I went. Not for them, but for myself, for closure. Dad looked small and fragile. Mom looked tired, scared. When she saw me, she started crying. "I was wrong," she whispered. "About everything. I just wanted control, and I lost you instead." I took her hand. "I forgive you. But I'm not coming back." She nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. A week later, their lawyer called to say my parents wanted to change their will again, to add me back. I told him, don't bother. Keep it how it is. Because by then, I already had everything that mattered, peace, love, and a home that felt full. That was all the inheritance I needed.